Hello and welcome back. Eddie Radosevich, George Stoy here from the SoonerScoop.com studios. Josh McCuistion back in Houston HQ Scoop headquarters. The sun rose today. Everything, I think, is as normal as possible here in the state of Oklahoma. Obviously, the news on Sunday night with the relief of duties, if you will, for Seth Littrell. We covered it in depth on Sunday evening. We'll get to Josh's thoughts on everything that goes into the coaching change and Joe John taking over play calling duties, as well as Kevin Johns being elevated. We'll get into that in the Game Day Rewind. Obviously, there's still plenty to get into from the disaster that was on Saturday in Norman, America. But this is a recruiting report. And obviously, Josh, you've been on the phones here in, I guess the last 12 hours since everything went down. I think the number one question for a bunch of Oklahoma fans right now is, can you hold this class together? And I guess the place to start here is you've talked to a number of guys that are in the commitment class, and where do things stand? Any concern with any guys? Just here from the start.
Well, so far, and the guys I've heard from, it's unanimous. Everybody has been very confident, very much a kind of accepting of this is what it had to be. These are football guys. They see what's happening there on the field. I don't think anybody had anything unrealistic to say. And a lot of guys were very much like, I loved Coach Littrell. I really liked him. But for the most part, it's been pretty positive. If you were going to say one guy that you kind of had an eye on, it's Jaden O'Neal. We've talked about that before. There's a real relationship there between Seth and his father. I think that really drew Jaden to Oklahoma. Just his dad's a very blunt, straightforward guy. So is Seth, as you guys, of course, know. So I think there was some real, this could be a guy that's going to look out for me. And I'm going to feel comfortable kind of under his wing while I'm at Oklahoma. Obviously, that's not going to happen. From what I've gathered, there's been some early communication between Jaden and Brent Venables. And I think Oklahoma is making positive strides. But again, it's so early for him and all that's going on. It wouldn't shock me if something kind of, at least maybe like a step back and kind of see what he'll do from there.
Josh, how do they approach this? Because it's such a tricky situation if you're a coach on the staff right now, because, all of these assistants are, I'm sure, now wondering, hey, do I have a job on the staff next year? I'm sure Brent's going to have to step in and do a lot more recruiting on that side of the ball in terms of keeping some of these guys committed. I mean, how do coaches, and I know you're probably in a tough spot too, Josh. You haven't covered a situation quite like this a ton. How do you keep guys from decommitting and keep this thing together if you're this coaching staff right now?
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. I'm used to making these calls when we're talking about Jeff Lebby elevating to a head coaching job or, whatever it may be. It's never, hey, I'm really sorry to have to make this call, but this coach you've known just got fired, like that. And that to me has been a unique circumstance. It just has. But as far as Oklahoma, I think there is it's kind of a Schrodinger's cat situation where they get to sell like, hey, man, to my knowledge, I'm going to be here. Like, I haven't heard anything. I don't know anything that but at the same time, they know in the back of their head that all options are on the table. They're not fools. So I think that's probably the hardest part, is having your heart in man, it's set. We're good. Have it in that pitch and knowing, hey, man, anything can happen here. This is, 6 weeks ago, no one saw this happening to Seth Littrell. So wild stuff can happen over the course of the next month and a half. So I don't think I talk all the time about recruiting as being about what you can pitch and that kind of thing. And for me, I think the only thing Oklahoma coaches can really pitch right now is what's available on the field, guys. Because, you can talk about, we don't know what's what. We know they need help on offense. We know there are I was writing something for Future Sooners, which I haven't even had a chance to finish yet. But I was talking about, what does Oklahoma need in the run game? They need big plays. What is Torrey Blaylock? He's a big play guy. That is his specialty. So you can sell those kind of things. It's, what is your conviction level? How much can you really have success with it when, again, you're not a fool and these kids aren't either. They know the score.
You talked to a number of guys, in the class as you've gone over, just specifically Ryan Foje, Kevin Sperry, Elijah Thomas out of Shakota. How have those guys' reactions been? And as you said, I think that there's going to be a lot of attention placed on the offensive line unit. I think it's been said time and time again how good this class is for Bill Beatembo. Kind of what's the pulse right now? Obviously, Oklahoma's looking for any type of help on the offensive line, currently being almost dead last in the country, which is still just insane to say in sacks allowed.
It really is unbelievable. You know, you as far as the offensive line class, we'll start there because I know that's really probably one of the two most pivotal situations in this class as far as how it holds together. Talked to Ryan Fojay almost immediately. Ryan Fojay was, you know, when I asked him the question, you could tell it was more of a, I don't know if I feel good about, you know, the fact they've let him go. Like, and I was like, well, I don't really mean it like that. I kind of mean, where do you stand on this? And he was like, oh, I'm a Sooner for life. Like that was his direct response. And you're like, okay. I mean, that couldn't sound a lot better. Owen Hollenbeck sends me a 2-word response, Boomer Sooner. And I'm like, okay, I think Owen Hollenbeck's going to be fine. Darius Afalava, spoke to him a little bit yesterday, and I think his initial response was concerning because it was kind of like, I don't want to shake anything up. I don't want to. And really, I think what he was trying to avoid was, again, the way I worded the initial question I sent to several of these guys, I think it was a little confusing to them. Like, I think I worded it poorly, and that'll shock no one who reads the scoop. But I think it was really a matter of when we really got to talk about what I was asking them, and it was just more about, where are you with Oklahoma? What is this situation? Darius was like, I'm in, I'm solid. I feel good about this situation. Like, I think all these guys are sad that it's happening. They don't want to walk into that scenario, but I definitely haven't talked to anyone yet where they're just like, well, I'm out. And I think that's where, if there's any advantage to firing a first-year assistant, it's that he hasn't built all these relationships. He's not the foundation of really any of these recruitments. So I think it can all be okay. And I mean, that's the same. Elijah Thomas was very, very complimentary of Seth Littrell. And again, from a very similar area of Oklahoma. I mean, Chakotah and Muskogee are, right by each other. So, relatively speaking. So there's plenty of connection there, but at the same time, he trusts Emmett Jones. He has a great relationship there. And, he talked a lot about just putting his faith in God. Like, that's kind of what he said is, I see this path in front of me, and I'm going to walk it kind of regardless of what happens.
I think it's really important to say that all this is very fluid. Sure. Whether we're talking about obviously recruits right now, but the quarterback situation, assistant coaches, like all of this can change very quickly. Like I think it's great to hear these guys are still in on this thing. They're still committed. But like Josh said, it's those relationships that have been built over time, a Bill Beatembo and Emmett Jones, guys that have been here now a little bit, DeMarco Murray, all those guys, they're currently still employed. Is that going to be the case in a month and a half? We'll see, right? We honestly don't know. And a large part of it will depend on who they go hire as the OC. So I don't want to be a Debbie Downer, right? But I do think it's all kind of with a grain of salt, right, Josh? It's like that's great right now. Let's see, what this thing looks like in a month or so.
I feel like George and I exchange roles. Like on the team stuff, I'm the negative, and on recruiting, George is like, hey, let's not get too crazy. But no, you're right. You absolutely are. And I feel like I should say this for clarity. A lot of these guys, when I'm talking to them, it's like, Jonathan Hatton is a really good example, the 2026 running back commitment. He was like, yeah, I'm sorry that happened. It's an unfortunate situation, but Coach Murray's my guy.
Yeah.
Okay. Like, I mean, that's great. And I mean, maybe that's enough. And, DeMarco stays and everything writes itself. But again, guys, like George said, we don't know. And the one thing I do want to really clarify, I think people will hear, oh, Brent Venables reached out to this guy. Brent Venables reached out to this guy, and kind of take that to mean like, oh, that means that guy's position coach is in trouble. That's not what it means. That means Brent Venables is planning for if something has to happen, there is a relationship there that, like he has cultivated, he has maintained. And that's a great part of the way Brent recruits. They recruit as an entire staff. There are relationships beyond just the position coaches. So it's not the second, if somebody gets cut loose, that player doesn't really know anyone else in the staff. That's not the way it is. That's not the way Oklahoma operates. So that is something that helps in a situation like this. But at the same time, Brent Venables is going to have to make those calls so that he's ready to make whatever move he needs to make come December, January, whatever it may be. So, again, I just don't want people to read too much into that and start thinking, well, because Brent called a wide receiver or an offensive lineman or whoever it may be, that's indicative of anything in particular.
What's to be made of the guys that were in town this weekend? Obviously, probably a little bit of an uncomfortable, maybe awkward situation just in terms of being hosted. Had a couple of unofficial visitors. Austin Pay was in on his official visit. How much have you been able to talk to some of these guys and just kind of the weirdness surrounding the weekend with, I think what a lot of people felt like coming out of Saturday was the inevitable, which obviously happened on Sunday.
Yeah, and there's no question. I mean, I want to always be honest. I haven't got to talk to as many of the visitors that I would have liked to. Austin Pay, from what I can gather, that visit went pretty well. He's not a guy that talks a lot, so I'm not going to say I have got great insight into it, but just talking to normal sources and that sort of thing, I think the visit went pretty well, as well as you could expect. I mean, guys, you were there. No player, or no coach when he sets up a recruiting visit is hoping that the team's going to be down 21-0 in the first 5 minutes of the game and half the stadium's booing. Like that's a tough sell. So you've got to kind of navigate that kind of stuff. But in general, the guys I've talked to, it sounds like it went well. I mean, they had James Carrington, the big defensive lineman in 2026 from Bishop Gorman. He tweeted out some pictures of him having a good time, and he leaves some thought that maybe he'll return. I mean, obviously he liked what Oklahoma's defense did. It's just a matter of, at some point, even the defensive guys are like, well, I don't want to have to carry the water all the time. So there's a lot Oklahoma's got to cure here before I think they can really start picking up momentum in recruiting again.
It's like somebody got invited to a family Christmas, maybe the first one that you've been to the other side of the family, and all hell breaks loose because the uncle's, drinking and touching the cousins again. It was a weird weekend. Maybe a weird analogy.
I don't know if you guys watched The Bear,
Very weird.
But it's a lot like going to the Seven Fishes dinner in The Bear. You don't know what you walked into until you're there, and it's way too late.
I'm guessing
and a car
Eddie's
has
not
come
watched
through
that.
the living room. So
I started watching it.
The Bear's
and then
great.
Just
That's
never
also
finished. Like
that's
the
an
first
all-time
season.
episode. All-time episode.
That episode's one of those ones you watch it once and you don't ever want to watch it again. It's too manic. It's too crazy, but it is unbelievably good.
Carrie wants to know who would be driving the car. I'm
Seth
just passing it
Littrell.
along.
Seth Littrell is driving the car on Saturday.
See, I don't even need to see the episode to know that that's probably not a good thing.
No.
Unbelievable. Well, it's going to, like you said, George, it is going to be a very fluid situation here over the next couple weeks because there is going to be a lot of movement. There's going to be a lot of speculation about what Oklahoma does for the long term. Obviously, going and having a national search, and then we got into this on Sunday night. Does he bring in his own staff? What kind of control is he going to have? What coaches are going to be back? It's an interesting moment right now for the Brent Venables regime. All sounds good though on the surface. Obviously, I guess I go back to the idea that this offense does need help, and I don't know how that couldn't appeal to a lot of people if they wanted to play football at a pretty high level. So it's going to be kind of interesting to keep an eye on. Anything else, Josh, just in terms of fallout from the Seth Littrell move on Sunday night?
No, nothing in particular. I'll say, you mentioned Kevin Sperry. Obviously, quarterback, such an interesting topic right now around campus and just around Oklahoma. And he sounded really solid. I know there's been a lot of rumors, kind of off and on all off season and even into the early portion of the year here. But he was very quick in getting back to me, very honest, just acted like, no, I'm all in. There's no question. And again, guys, I mean, not knowing what quarterback's going to look like next year, you need every capable body you can get for whoever is going to be calling plays in 2025.
Certainly going to be interesting. And, obviously at the end of the season, as we talked about last night, when that portal opens, you would imagine that it's rather important. Before we get to some of the games that you went to, Josh, anything or any thoughts just in terms of the JUCO offensive lineman offer that Oklahoma seemingly put out this morning?
Talk about right now, we had to do this right now. This guy, junior college offensive lineman, I've never even heard his name. I won't pretend I have. And so, I go through a little bit of film. I'm like, okay, that's you can see kind of what they like, what's interesting there.
Can he be here Saturday? Can he be here or
What's that?
here? Can he be in
Yes.
Oxford Saturday? That situation.
Golly, guys, going through the Monday Morning Idiot. I know we'll talk about it in the rewind, but they could. Eddie, you might have a role. Like, I mean,
Okay.
they all hands on deck in Mississippi.
Oh boy. All right. Very good. Well, they do look good before the games. I can tell you that. Like before they get to kickoff, they look fantastic, and it's because of William and Lauren, which is the official custom clothier of OU football. William and Lauren outfits your favorite OU players in custom suits that boost their confidence off the field to match their confidence on the field. That might be questionable. Their perfectly tailored clothing ensures every Sooner stands out in comfort and style at prices that make luxury accessible. Visit William and Lauren in Oklahoma City or online at williamandlauren.com. That is williamandlauren.com. Dress like a champion and make your style as legendary as OU football. There they are. See, I told you. Look really good. Maybe they should wear the suits out to the field.
Wear them
Oh,
on
look at B
on
Hall
Saturday.
there, looking sharp.
Got the glasses. Caden Helms got it in a little bit last week. Very good looking suits. William and Lauren. Go visit them in Oklahoma City or williamandlauren.com. And as Carrie notes, it's important to note, Gavin Sawchuk still on the football team, even though that video is from Texas. Maybe he wasn't there on Saturday. We don't know. Good people over at William and Lauren. Josh, you did get out and see a pair of games. You were back in the Sooner State on Thursday night, and then Friday night dropped in on I think it's a school that Oklahoma used to recruit a lot of. We used to talk about Euless Trinity quite a bit, and unbelievable size on their offensive line, starting with Katoa, the big boy, that I think broke onto the scene during the summer at Brent Venables football camp, had the great video with him and Bill Beatenbow laughing after he was mauling all over guys. Looked to be about the same as Euless Trinity wins 45-31. Katoa looked incredible.
Yeah, he is a guy that, again,
He's just
every
massive.
time you see him, you're like, yeah, I mean, look at that. Like, that's what you want your O-lineman to look like. Like, just a big, nasty mother. Like, he really, and, I joked with him after the game. Somebody said something right as we were about to do an interview, and he kind of broke a smile. I go, that's the first time I've seen you smile all night. And he goes, I smile a lot. And it felt very Bill Beatenbow-ish. Like, when we're like, oh, Bill, like, we thought it was such a big deal when Bill smiled. And then I know, at some point later in camp, Eddie, he was joking with you about, like, I smile all the time kind of thing. And I was like, I talked about it in the interview. There is some real connection as far as personality and how they present themselves between Toa Katoa and Bill Beatenbow. So, but yeah, he again, every time you see him, you're like, there's no way he moves like he does. And then you just watch him. Guys, the thing I came away with, and this was one of his better blocks where he really did keep his feet moving. The thing that I noticed, though, is how much room he still has to be such an even better run blocker. Like right now, he kind of puts his hands on you and leans on you, and he's just so damn big and strong. There's not much you can do about it. But when he learns to like keep his feet hot and really just keep moving, he's going to be unbelievable as kind of a lead blocker, like one of those guys that could seal an edge on like a GT counter, like, okay, I'm going to seal the tackle inside. He'd be just a dominant force in that once he kind of, I guess, gets a little cleaner with what he's doing with his feet sometimes. But again, I don't want that to be a knock on him at all. I think he's tremendously talented. He's just got to work on the finer points, and he's a junior in high school. Yeah.
I mean, this poor kid from Keller. Not much you're going to be able to do.
And again, he could have been so much filthier with that if he wanted to. Like that's like a aggressive shoulder he threw into the guy. He didn't even extend his arms and really pop the dude. And he 100% could have. But this is, guys, if nothing can tell people about my love of offensive line play, this is one of the best runs I've seen. And I didn't even get to watch it until the replay because I was so focused on Toa that that kid broke to the left, came back around to the other side of the field, and all I'm watching is big man just picking on people.
Josh, where's he at in his recruitment? I know it's a long ways to go in terms of, we said it earlier, we don't know what the staff's going to look like, what this offense might look like in a couple months, but where's he at in his recruitment? I know he's, garnered a lot of attention from some big-time schools down in Texas, obviously Texas A&M, TCU, schools like that.
And here is the crew doing the haka after the game. This is one of the cool things about getting to watch Trinity. And He leads it here for a second. He makes the call. Yeah. I mean, I'm not messing with that dude. But as far as his recruitment, we talked about it in an interview afterward. He really mentioned Texas and Oklahoma. And I kind of asked him, do you have any other schools you're going to visit? Anything like that? And he really didn't. He was at Texas last weekend for the Georgia game. And then obviously was at Oklahoma and Texas a couple weeks ago in the Cotton Bowl, and is planning to be back at OU. I believe he told me for the Alabama game, which, obviously makes sense. So maybe it just comes down to those two. Like maybe that's what this is, and maybe it's that simple. And I know everyone's saying, well, look where Texas is, look where Oklahoma is. I think he just has a really good relationship with Oklahoma. He's been there a lot. He's been around the campus a lot. Alabama would be his first game. For some reason, I had it in my head he had gone to the Tennessee game, but Alabama would be his first game in Norman. So I think that will be, let's call it an interesting experience. We'll see what it looks like, in a month. But there's plenty of reason to think Oklahoma might just be a little in front here. Now, like you said, George, a lot of variables are going to play out before he signs in December of 2025. But there is, I think there's plenty of optimism with how things currently stand.
I'm fearful of bringing up his teammate because I'm going to have to say his name, and I don't think it's going to go well for me. Poliasi Falahola. Did I say that even remotely correctly? We do want to know.
I would never even attempt it, so great job.
We do want to put a note out for him, though. 6'9", 380? Is that what that's what he's listed at on the online Trinity roster. We got a little bit of video of him, and if you saw 71 that was next to Katoa, which we've talked about is a large human, this kid's next level massive. He's a 2025 recruit, right?
Yes, and it wouldn't shock me if he got like a UTEP or maybe even a North Texas, like something like that. I mean, he's got a lot of work to do. He is very, very large because I've seen him listed at 420 in places. Like he is a mountain of a human. 71 right there.
I mean, look at this
that
kid.
Is unbelievable.
Like 57 right there in the background. 57's probably 6'3", 275, 280, and looks like a little kid next to him. Like Katoa is 6'4", 360, and I took a picture. I put it up on Twitter. You can go find it from Friday night. Where, I mean, everything looks tiny next to him. I mean, and it's not just the number. He is Phil Loadholt like. He is that big of a human being.
Unbelievable.
But just bring him in on a walk-on. Could they do that?
Certainly couldn't hurt. I mean, you got the physical, attributes already. Just incredible. Thursday night.
I would love it if OU starts doing the haka before the game. I'm all in on that.
I don't know if they would be able to right now because of the way they're playing on the field. I think that you have to have a certain level. There's a certain bar of rewards that you can get to, and they're certainly not anywhere close to that. But that would be badass.
Maybe they'll do the hot Tua.
No,
well, George, we're going to ask you to leave because that was uncalled
Between late night podcast George and this George has got, I don't know. There's a lot happening with him right now.
Yeah, we need to talk about that on the unofficial 40. I was going to say, did you go to Mass on Sunday and have you been forgiven by the church?
Yes, I have. I have been forgiven. Well, they've been wondering where you're at.
I was at St. Charles, Bormeo. I was altar serving on Sunday.
Yeah, okay.
You did come back up to the Suitor State, get a little OK Preps love, Josh, and you went and saw Bethany play over the weekend. Obviously, Evanson Molaska, the Oklahoma offer, currently resides there. The two guys we're going to highlight. Ricky Brady's kid, Bre Brady, looks really interesting in the 2028 class. But what'd you make of Evanson Molaska? That was the first time that you'd seen him in person in a game, not a camp setting?
Yeah, it was first chance to watch him in a game or really anytime outside of an OU camp. It just isn't always convenient to hit up Bethany. But I just kind of had a Thursday night, and obviously with it being the fall break week in Oklahoma, there was a lot of good Thursday night games. So got up there to see him. Broke a huge touchdown run in this one. I think it was 57 yards, if I remember correctly. But again, just like you'd expect, they don't throw at him. They're not challenging him. I mean, his speed, his strength. One time they went down vertically down the field on him, and he got a little grabby. You can tell there's still a lot of raw, kind of untapped ability with Evanson Molaska. But at the same time, I still go back to when Oklahoma offered him so early on, and I was talking to some people there around the camp, and it was like, it's his feet. His feet make him special. And you can see it, like just the way he moves and the way everything is so effortless for him. Again, I think there's a lot of room for growth. He's a smaller corner. He's probably 5'9", 5'10". This is kind of the play right here. It got a little grabby, kind of got beat. I was on a totally unrelated aside, a little impressed with Hara. I thought Hara had some decent football players, and they're doing a nice job over there. The coaching staff, coach, I think it's Bielik. I'm not quite exactly sure how to say his last name, but anyway, yeah. I liked Malaska. You can see a lot of speed there. He's a guy that can turn and run with people, and I think it's just a matter of him learning, kind of developing. He's still very, very raw.
I'm sure Josh likes to see. We saw it on Saturday. 2 true freshmen out there playing quite a bit. Eli Bowen obviously coming in and playing a ton, and then Devon Jordan. But how much does his brother play a role in this at all? And obviously he's on Oklahoma's roster. Comes over from Utah. Is that correct?
Jocelyn?
As a preferred walk-on. I mean, does that play any sort of role? Wanting to stay close to home, things like that?
I do think it does. I think if Oklahoma really pushes for Evenson, I think it'll be pretty tough to beat. I think he is very tight with his brother, his brothers. There are several that came over from Haiti that the Molaskas brought over, have obviously adopted them, taken them under their wing, and they're a close family. So I think it would be very meaningful. And I know Evenson looks up to his brother, and Jocelyn, obviously, I think he'd hoped that he was going to find his way out there a little quicker than it's happened. But I don't think there's any like ill will or bad feelings about what's happened in Norman. And every time I talk to the family, it's very much about just how good, how well the Soul Mission kind of helps them handle, when they're on campus, what to do, knowing that Jocelyn's going to be okay. Like there's a lot that goes into it. And so I think I think there's a lot of, I don't know, just general warmth kind of about the Oklahoma situation from the Molaskas.
2028 teammate Bre Brady, the son of former Oklahoma all-conference selection, 6-7 years, I think, in the NFL. Ricky Brady, but Bre Brady, 2028, obviously very, very young, but certainly has some physical tools that have been passed down from his father.
Yeah, his father, a Putnam City West great that has taken his son to Bethany. I'm trying not to harbor too much anger over that, but hard to blame him. But yeah, I got out there and I was watching Evenson, and I have, just to full disclosure, have some family, not family, but close friend connection to Bethany and that whole program. So that was kind of like almost like a high school reunion for me on that sideline. It was very strange. A lot of kids of dads I grew up with, stuff like that. But Breck, I just happened to look out there and you're like, who's this big old kid? And you look and you're like, he's listed as a freshman. That can't be right. There's no way that's the right listing. And then as I get to talking to people, they're like, oh yeah, that Brady name, that should ring a bell. And you're like, oh, okay. And then I see, for those that don't remember Ricky was a big 6'5", 255-pound tight end. His mother is 6 foot tall as well. She's as tall as I am. And you're like, okay, that kid was just going to be big. And I'm told he has a younger brother that may be even bigger. But Breck is interesting. I'm going to be interested to see how he develops, because there's no question the body type is going to play somewhere. You're that big, you're that athletic, something can happen. But when you're 6'5", 240-ish as a high school freshman, I don't know. I mean, do you grow into a 3-technique defensive tackle? And he played a lot of D-line for Bethany in this game. Do you grow into an offensive tackle? There's a lot of possibilities because, the era of his dad, when it was, you could play tight end at 265 pounds, that's not really a thing anymore. So, I'm very interested to see how Breck develops. But regardless of where he plays, I'm very interested in the potential.
Is OU interested, Josh? I mean, I know it's way early, but is there any sort of interest there?
To my knowledge, there hasn't been any, probably the generic mail that a lot of kids get around the state. Because, I mean, obviously, being the son of a really, I don't know if an OU great is too strong, but obviously an outstanding player at Oklahoma, you're going to be on people's radar pretty early, and especially when you're at his size, his measurables. So and I will say, as kind of, I feel like I didn't really mean to dismiss the possibility of tight end. Everybody I talked to tell me his hands are unbelievable. He made some kind of one-handed catch in a game a couple of weeks ago that I believe won the game. Now, I believe it was a junior varsity game, but again, you're dealing with a freshman. That's what you get sometimes. But he played a ton in this one and was a matchup of two teams that are probably going to make the playoffs. So I think that's a sign of where Bethany kind of sees him and what his importance could be as they try to make another deep run in the playoffs.
Certainly going to be interesting to watch. Obviously, Katoa and everything that's going on with Euless Trinity and how this 2024 season wraps up. And then, I think we're going to be getting back over just based off the small footage there, or the small sample size of footage. I think probably going to be getting out to see Mr. Brady a lot more here over the next couple years over at Bethany High School. So, all right, that's going to do it for the recruiting report. We will also be doing the game day rewind here on Monday, getting into, obviously Josh's thoughts on everything that's going on with the Seth Littrell firing, as well as moving forward where Oklahoma goes into Oxford on Saturday as a 20-point underdog. So it should be fun, I think. For George, Josh, I'm Eddie. We'll see you right back here next Monday for another recruiting report. Bye-bye.